I want to exercise a little self awareness and admit that I've had a horribly hard time deciding what I want to talk about next. Too many ideas, my mind's going in too many different directions at the same time. And to do it as a video, it would sound a lot like the current president, where everything I say is going to end up being a word salad because there isn't any cohesive thought unit. There's nothing to tie it all together. But I thought I would try this. So, one of the big problems that we have with making a living in the United States today is that we don't value each other's labor. I mean, we say we do, and we like to pretend we do, but we really don't. A lot of that is because the way that we price labor has been very slow to change. And I mean very slow. We like to say that shopkeepers are essential workers. Because after all, if the product is not on the shelf, you can't buy it. Right? If the product is not received, in other words, if payment isn't made for the product, you can't buy the product. And I don't mean payment from you. I mean payment the shopkeeper gives to his supplier. I think a lot of the reason for that, just intuitively, when we started doing shops, and when I say when we started doing shops, I'm talking about after we went from our communal societies to a larger society where we're doing trade, right? So as we're doing trade, we're not accepting an exchange of goods anymore. We're looking for an exchange of currencies, whatever that currency might be. So you're looking for pieces of silver, pieces of gold, those types of things. We used to tie the people that work in the shop to the shop. Even if you were a slave that was owned by the shop owner, you were tied to the shop. The assumption was that the shop owner would take care of your needs, whatever those needs might have been. So as a result, shopkeepers were paid strictly in the profit of the store, right? But as time marches on and as society industrializes, that is no longer the case, right? So you look at, for instance, chains are the perfect example of this. A Walmart employee has no tie to Walmart, right? They work there. They don't get anything from Walmart aside from their salary. Their salary is determined by what society decides their labor is worth. Historically, their labor was worth what the shopkeeper provided. Now, if you were a slave or a servant working in a shop, you were housed. You had a minimal amount of food, or, you had at least enough food to where you could keep the shop every day. Your housing was in the shop. You had no commuter expenses. So on and so forth. So as a result, we don't pay shopkeepers for their labor. We pay shopkeepers based on that idea that the shop owner is providing housing. The shop owner is providing minimal food. The shop owner is providing minimal clothing. That's no longer true. The shop owner doesn't provide any of these things. But these are still costs. And in reality, they're costs of maintaining the job. You can't go work at Walmart naked. You can't do it. if you don't eat for 2 weeks, you will die. And then Walmart has to hire a new employee. We don't count that into our thinking of what does it cost a Walmart employee to work at Walmart? Or what does it cost an Amazon employee to work at Amazon? It used to be their total commute was to walk down a flight of stairs at most, walk across a building. That was their commute. It's not anymore. At $4 a gallon for gasoline, if you live in, say, Waukegan, Illinois, and work at the Amazon warehouse in Kenosha, a tank of gas at, say, 15 gallons at $3 a gallon, that's $45 per tank. And in 14 days, you're going to use that 15 gallons of gas. So every 14 days, just to go to and from work is $45. That as an Amazon employee, I have that when we decided how to price the labor for shop workers didn't exist. We've been very stubborn about not changing these things. Another wonderful example is the way we pay teachers. When we're an agrarian society, you had a one-room schoolhouse. It housed everyone from to about 8th grade because you realistically didn't need an education beyond 8th grade. You didn't need to know beyond arithmetic. You didn't need to know beyond... You didn't have to be aware of the complicated biology. You didn't need to know the inner workings of photosynthesis. So basically your education ended at 8th grade. You didn't need any more education than that. Now let's go and look at what kind of effect that had on the way that we pay teachers. So it used to be, I'm in this farm community, one-room schoolhouse. I have K through 8th grade, or 1st through 8th grade, because we didn't have kindergarten. So now, in this community, all of the farmers set aside a little bit of their crop so that I had food to eat as a teacher. The local tailor would sew my clothing. They would make quilts, and each family would donate 1 or 2 quilts to me so that I had blankets to keep me warm in winter. I had clothing. It was supplied by my community. If I needed work done on my house, the community would come and work on my house, much the same way Amish do things today. Those expenditures I didn't have. And then the community would put aside a small stipend, which would allow me to do things like buy books and learn new skills so that I could bring those new skills to the community. So my cost of living as a teacher was half the cost of living for the community, because the community provided that other half of my cost of living. That no longer exists. In an urban setting, that doesn't work. It can't be done in an urban setting. So now, our base salary for teachers is half of the salary that they should be making just to keep their head above water. And I think the real problem is that we don't. We don't value labor. As a society, we just don't. We're more than happy to spend, say, I don't know, $300, $400 on a Sony PlayStation. The PlayStation costs like maybe $50 to build. But we don't want to spend, say, $20 per bushel for wheat. That wheat costs about $15 per bushel to grow. And then we wonder why there's so much anger with everybody else. As a farmer, the cost to produce my product, I will never yield that on the open market. You, the consumer, will never pay me what it costs me to provide my good to you. You demand that I provide those goods, but you don't value my labor enough to where I can cover my costs. Now notice, I didn't say that I'm earning a profit. I'm not. I can't even cover my costs. That's why so many farmers parcel off their land. They sell them to developers for whatever reason, whether that reason be an energy farm, or whether that reason be a new subdivision, or a new shopping mall that no one is going to visit after the first 6 months. Just in order to keep afloat, in order to be at zero every other year, I have to sell off large pieces of my land. And then I'm going to get to the point to where I have no land left to farm. And everybody wonders why. Now, of course, as the farmer, I'm going to be very angry. I'm going to hate you, my consumer. Now add on to that all the other stuff I can't control. I can't control the weather. If I don't get enough rain, I'm not going to get enough yield. Even if I get enough yield, just about half of that yield you're not going to buy because it's ugly. And then on top of that, you don't want to pay me what it costs me to grow it. That's how you end up with commercials. You get the large farmers that they're farming so much, it doesn't cost them to produce anything. And then you have all the small farmers in a community living next door to these industrial farmers. They can't compete. That value of labor for the person providing the labor is much greater than what the market is willing to pay for that labor. It holds true for goods too. Unfortunately, as much as we love to say free market economies work, they increase competition, they increase value, they don't. Free market economies encourage monopolies. And here's how. When I become the market power, I have capabilities that my competitors don't. Let's take a look at what Amazon did to diapers.com. And I want to be very clear, they didn't only do this to diapers.com. They did this to a lot of companies. And in fairness to Amazon, they're not the first one to do it. If you grew up in the West, i.e. the United States, Europe, you can look at Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie did this, where I can outproduce my competitors, or I can outsell my competitors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the thing my competitor sells, and I'm going to turn it into a loss leader. I'm going to price it so low that it would drive my competitor into bankruptcy. And because my competitor is not going to win to me, I'll eventually absorb my competitor because I can afford to buy my competitor from now. The value of his business is degraded to begin with, and it's only going to decrease. So I get to go to him and say, hey, look, the value of your business was $1 to the dollar. Now it's 80 cents to the dollar. I'll give you 50 cents to the dollar. Give me your business. And then I'll jack up the price on their product back to where the market wants it. Where the market is saying, yeah, I'm willing to pay that for that. And I said Andrew Carnegie did this initially with USX. He was able to produce steel faster than any of his competitors. He had such a glut of steel that he could afford to sell last year's inventory for pennies. His competitors couldn't afford to keep up with him. He bought his competitors. To Andrew Carnegie's credit, he also built the libraries. The Carnegie Library would later become the U.S. Public Library System. That's a story for another time. And a story I wish everybody learned. Amazon.com decided they wanted the Diapers.com domain. Diapers.com would go out and buy irregular and quote unquote expired diapers and resell them. They were honest about their product. They said that this was overstock product that didn't sell from somewhere else for whatever reason. If they were irregular, the products were marked as irregular. So Amazon.com started dropping diapers. They started, I guess the technical term is dumping, which, by the way, is a violation of the antitrust laws. They outpriced them. Eventually, Diapers.com, and unable to compete with Amazon absorbed them. They got the domain name, they bought the company, and sold their product at a much higher price. And we, the consumer, ate it up. We loved it. We thought it was a great idea. Amazon.com also did this to labor. Around the Christmas season, so beginning about July, August, Amazon.com will hire thousands of employees to staff a warehouse which needs no more than 100 employees. And they'll hire multiple thousands of employees with the intention of letting all of them go in February. So you literally have an employment cycle that lasts 3 to 4 months out of the year, and we, as a society, keep telling our politicians, our government, to allow Amazon.com to do this and give them tax breaks for doing this, not realizing that we're producing an unemployed workforce. We're actually encouraging unemployment. The reason that we're encouraging unemployment is because the way Amazon.com does things creates massive unemployment. So I'm going to hire 3,000 employees for 4 months of the year, and then for 8 months of the year, there are no available jobs. And it never dawns on any of us this is what's happening. The reason that we keep doing this is, as much as we like to say, oh yeah, I buy for quality, you don't. You buy the cheapest you can find. The only thing you look for when you're going to buy something is price. It's not necessarily a bad thing. We all do it. One of the things that really upsets me about myself is I want to be a mom and pop shop kind of guy. I can't afford it. I have to shop at Walmart. I don't make the living where I can afford to go and buy $6 for a TV dinner at the corner gas station, whom I know who owns that corner gas station. Neighbor of mine, whatever. But I have to go to Walmart because it's $3 at Walmart. It's $6 at this gas station. As often as I can, I will go to the gas station and buy the TV dinner. But I can't do it very often because I don't make that much money to where I can afford to do it. The reason that I don't make that kind of money is because my employer doesn't value my labor. The reason my employer doesn't value my labor is because their customer doesn't value my labor. And so we go into this cycle, and we keep perpetuating it. Now, there are solutions. I have solutions that I think will work. I don't know how good they are. Time will tell. But they're really difficult solutions to sell. And the reason they're so hard to sell is because none of us want to try to take the risk. But until we actually address these things, people living in urban environments, we don't empathize with the problems of rural America. People living in rural environments, as a general rule, don't empathize with the problems that exist in urban environments. Gun culture is where one of these problems exist. I have lived in places or in proximity of places where I know roughly half the family's meal come from the end of a rifle. These people require guns. They live so far out, they can't just drive to the grocery store. The nearest grocery store is an hour, 2-hour road trip away. It's a lot easier to go out to the back 40 and just hunt for deer or elk. In the meantime, using that same attitude in an urban environment where my closest grocery store is 15 minutes away, there are so many guns. And then you get into these areas where there are poor people that feel like, no, I shouldn't be poor. And trust me, every poor person feels like, I work too fucking hard to be this goddamn poor. I know I do. Add on to that, your employer doesn't value your labor at all. And when you employers out there go, no, that's not true, well, let's take a look at your salary structure. Again, looking at Walmart specifically. You work for Walmart, you get an annual 2% raise. Inflation increases more than that, which means every year a Walmart employee's salary decreases. Every year their salary gets smaller. The cost of living increases faster. Every year their salary reduces. And then we go shop at Walmart and we can't understand as the customer, oh, I'm paying this Walmart employee's salary. Why do they hate me? Duh. They hate you because you don't value their labor. It's that simple. You don't think they deserve to earn a living. I don't find value in the idea that you have to work 60, 80 hours a week just so that you can afford air to breathe. That's stupid. Now, I'm not saying let's make everybody rich. And I'm not saying people that get rich didn't earn it. Everybody works for what they have. Everybody worked their ass off for what they have. And there's more than a little bit of luck involved, too. But at the same time, we're basically saying, oh, well, if you're poor, you have no right to get ahead. You can disagree with me all you want, but then take a look at the way you shop. We go back to the fact that you're not looking for quality. You're looking for price. It's the only thing you look at when you go shop. Now, I understand more than half of that, so over 50% of that is because you just don't have the means. I get it. At the same time, when you do have the means, you're not doing anything to help anybody else out either. So, I don't know. This ties in with the way that we actually look at the poverty level in the U.S. I don't know who came up with the formula to do it. I know that when it was done, I believe it was like the third or second poorest county in the country was where we set the poverty level at. Since then, things have changed. We really love our capitalism here. And the more toxic it is, the more we love it. I'm a Michael Lewis fan. His books are awesome. His logic is awesome. I wish more Americans would get familiar with Michael Lewis's work. I wish more Americans would not only read Michael Lewis, I wish more Americans would read the works that he cites in his bibliographies. That 2008 housing crash that we had, which put the economy into a stupor that lasted for, God, almost 2 years. I blame Standard & Poor's. I blame Moody's. I blame Goldman Sachs. And I blame us, the American electorate. I blame us. We haven't figured out. I figured this out once we had the .com crash back in '96 under President Clinton. We have a stock market crash. We bail out the stock market. The cost of living doubles. Investors commit investment fraud. We give them a slap on the wrist. The stock market. Let me try that again. Investors commit basically investment fraud. The stock market crashes. We bail them out. Give them a slap on the wrist, and the cost of living doubles. In the meantime, salaries don't change. And we, the electorate, we're so stupid. We can't figure out, all those .com companies that were making money, they don't have a revenue vehicle. But their stock value keeps going up. Well, what does that mean? It means that their actual value of their stock is worthless. They don't have the assets. They don't have a revenue. They don't have customers. But we're so dumb that we gladly bail these people out. And then we re-elect the same politicians. I'm so fed up with too big to fail. Goldman Sachs put Moody and Standard & Poor's in a position to where they were giving really crap mortgage bond sureties to Standard & Poor's and Moody's to grade. Once they got the actual grade back, they would say to either Standard & Poor's or Moody's, if they went to Standard & Poor's, they would say, Moody's gave this a AAA rating. I'm just going to go get Moody's rating. And Standard & Poor's would kick up the rating. And then they would cross the street to Moody's and say Standard & Poor's gave this a AAA rating. And the reality is the rating on the mortgage bond surety can't be more than a C, C+. Then they turned around, took those same mortgage bond sureties, put them in the Greek sovereign fund. Got the Greek sovereign fund to be something like 80% mortgage bond sureties, and then short sold their mortgage bond sureties. By the letter of the law, that's fraud. It's fraud. By the letter of the law. And then President Obama turned around and bailed them out. bailed the investors out. That entire board of directors belongs in jail. Not just for Goldman Sachs, but for Standard & Poor's and Moody's. All three companies. The board of directors at that time, they all belonged in jail. Now let's talk about what they did to Greece. So now the Greek sovereign fund is filled with these crap mortgage bond sureties that are literally worthless. That Goldman Sachs, the company that sold them to the Greek sovereign fund, short sold. They short sold them because Goldman Sachs knew they were shit product. And of course, the entire Greek economy collapsed. So what did that do? Well, Greece needs a bailout. Realistically, there's only two countries outside of the United States that could do that bailout. Germany and the United Kingdom. Germany bailed them out. Germany, the largest economy in Europe, bailed out Greece. And the same fraud that collapsed the Greek economy now is beginning to infect all of the economies all over the world. Because the Bank of Scotland and the Bank of the United Kingdom invested heavily in those same shit mortgage surety bonds. So now the United Kingdom's economy is beginning to collapse. Germany's economy is beginning to collapse, and the US economy is beginning to collapse. Now this fraud finally comes out, and everybody starts dumping. They're running from the mortgage bond sureties like they're a disease. And the entire world economy collapses. Now I want you, the American electorate, to explain to me why none of us thought that, oh, wait a minute, we shouldn't be bailing out Goldman Sachs. We shouldn't be bailing out Standard & Poor's. We shouldn't be bailing out Moody's. We should be putting these companies in jail. Oh, they're too big to fail. It's going to hurt the economy for a short time. They hurt the economy for almost a decade. Because we had to bail them out. And what do you know? Salaries didn't go up afterwards either. You know what all those companies did? They paid out bonuses and increased stock buybacks to beef up their own stock value. And we wonder why there are so many problems with the economy. We love our capitalism, and the more toxic it is, the more we love it. And we keep electing politicians that make our capitalism more and more toxic. You want to know why the Affordable Care Act failed? You got Germany and Switzerland, which have completely privatized universal health insurance. And their system is successful because through legislation, an insurance company is required to provide insurance. Here in the United States, thanks to Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, they're not. And you know why he was able to get away with that? Because that was the only way that we could actually pass the Affordable Care Act. You know whose fault that is? Ours. And then we re-elected the dumbass. The man's a criminal. He has no empathy. He has no common sense. He's an evil person. And we keep re-electing him. That's why our economy sucks. That's why things will never get better. And none of us can understand that. I don't get why. We really have to start looking in the mirror. All right, that's enough. I'm going to get off my soapbox now.